in the car on the way to the Christmas party, I was actually like half talking to God, but half talking to myself. I was really talking to myself, just hoping that, maybe God was listening. And I was like, you probably think I'm such a hypocrite, don't you, God? I was like going to this church things and I'm not a Christian. And I was like, you probably hate me, don't you, God? And then I get to this Christmas party and it was a great little party. But at the end, Krista and her team went around and they were like praying for people at the party. And they get to me and they're praying for me. And then Krista goes, God says he doesn't hate you. And I was like, what?
So
Like,
amazing.
those were the exact words I used in the car was, you probably hate me, don't you, God? And it's like he's responding through her saying, God says he doesn't hate you. And it was like a seed planted in my heart again. Sure. Like all these little seeds were planted by Krista. And it was like another seed planted, but I still just wasn't ready to give it up. And so shortly after that Christmas party, my brother ended up committing suicide. And it was like heart-wrenching because this brother, he was my Irish twin. We were very, very close and we did everything together. So hearing that he passed away was absolutely heart-wrenching to me. And Krista ended up calling me and she's like, can I come over and pray for you? And she did that. And then she invited me to the Vineyard Northwest to go get prayer. And I think this was like maybe a day or two after my brother's passing. And I was just so upset still. And I was like, I don't know, Krista, let me think about it. Cause I hadn't even had a shower that day. And I was just sitting in my chair, just crying my eyes out that morning.
Just a mess.
Yes, feeling totally lost. I fought with myself again for hours on if I should go to the vineyard and get prayer or not. And I kept going to my husband back and forth, like, should I go? Should I not? I don't know. And he kept telling me, go, go.
Wow.
And I just kept fighting with myself. And then finally I was like, you know what? I'm going to go. So I ended up going to the Vineyard Northwest with Krista and they put me, well, actually, I should say this. Before I decided to go, I told my husband, I was like, I'm going to go, but I'm only going to go to test God. I said, if he's real, if he really wants something to do with me, maybe he'll say something to me at the vineyard. And you can ask my husband, he'll tell you the same story. And I get to the vineyard and they put me in this room with 3 people that were there to pray with me and for me. And we're in there praying for a while. And then this guy looks at me and he said 7 words that changed my life. And he said, God says you're here to test him. And it was then I was like, wow.
Wow.
Like, that is no coincidence.
Right.
You couldn't have made that up. I was like, wow. And so that's when I ultimately surrendered my life and said, God, I'm obviously not doing it right. I don't know what I'm doing wrong, but I give you my life. Take it, do what you want with it. It's yours. And I never looked back.
Wow, man. Okay. So now we get to go back to my question. What was the difference between, I mean, you've kind of talked about it, but what was the difference between those other times throughout your life where like your grandpa was, on his deathbed and you were like, I'm going to get involved with church. I'm going to do this. I'm going to, and really circumstances driving you to kind of get into this position of, I'm going to get right with God. I'm going to get involved, and then falling back into it versus this. And what have you thought about that? Like, what was the difference between back then versus this moment?
Yeah. So back then I wasn't reading the Bible as a child. So I didn't really know the full truth of God, only the little bits and pieces that I would pick up in church when I was actually listening, right? Because as a kid, we're usually not listening.
Yeah.
And in the teen years, you're usually just focused on, the other kids in the church and the boys and what's going on. So I didn't have the full truth of who God was. And the little bits that I picked up was I figured that if I didn't live a good life that was pleasing to God, that I would just go to hell.
Mm.
And so I thought at that, after I messed up so many times, I thought, well, there's no hope for me. I'm just
Mm.
gonna go to hell, and that's just it. But when I met Krista, she showed me the truth of who God was.
Mm.
And, that he didn't die just for our sins, but he died for our value. That
Mm.
he values who we are. He loves us. And, he didn't go to the cross to condemn us, but he died on the cross so that we could be reconnected with the Father, that we could have that relationship with him.
Mhm.
And so I started learning the truth about who God was before I even actually gave my life to him. Like, she started shedding the truth on who he was. So in these little times that she would invite me to do these things, and I would see her live it out,
Mhm.
but I would also, like, she would tell me all about God all the time. Like,
Mhm.
that's always our
Yeah,
conversation.
that's what she does.
And even today, still, like, that's our conversations. We're not talking about who hurt us and why, and,
Yeah.
all these crazy things that most people talk about. We're
Mhm.
always talking about God. And so she was always
Mm.
revealing to me who he was and what he really thought about me. So, when I went to this church and I experienced it tangibly, like, for myself, like, it was just a no-brainer then. I was like, wow, like, he is real,
Mm.
and he does love me, and he does want a relationship with me.
Mhm.
And I say he is real because it's not that I didn't think that he was real, but who he who he is real.
Yeah.
That he's good
Mhm.
and not just some guy that created the world to watch us all, like, crash and burn.
Flounder. Yeah. Yeah, and
Yeah.
I think that that's
So,
so important for, everybody to have that personal encounter with the Lord. I mean, it's so crucial. Um,
yeah.
and I've walked a lot of young people through, because I used to be in missions, and we used to take people around the world, and have these moments where people would have these crisis of faith moments where they realize, that their beliefs were their parents' beliefs, and they were just believing them because that's what you did. And then all of a sudden
Mhm.
now they're faced with the reality of, like, who is, kind of like Jesus asked Peter, who do you say that I am?
Mhm.
And those are really powerful moments.